Why is that? I mean, we both know marketing matters, but why do you think there's this perception? And it's more true in SaaS. I don't understand why that is, but for SaaS, they want to like just have the product do all the work, I think, maybe. But what do you think it is?
I think to answer your question, I think the reason that they don't think to hire marketing is very often the CEO doesn't have come from a marketing background. And so his solution is, I'm just going to hire a bunch of sellers. First off, he or she is the initial seller. They're going to go close, they're going to use their Rolodex, they're going to close a bunch of business. As that opportunity grows, they go hire sellers. And the sellers go out and then they get frustrated because the sellers can't sell the same solution they've been selling.
Where are you focusing now in terms of your fractional practice, since you're new into the fractional game or newer? What are the types of firms that you want to add and you can add the most value?
Stop hiring salespeople. Stop adding more salespeople, and go longer term. Don't just go with cold outreach. Don't keep investing in a new email vendor and all that, because with AI, that is so hard. That's such a hard slog. And again, you're not going after the people that aren't in market yet.
Chuck, welcome to Product Growth Stories. Super happy to have you on the show. So Chuck, you are an experienced CMO, fractional CMO, and I'd love to dive into your experiences growing companies and like what matters versus what doesn't matter. One thing I notice, for example, is a lot of companies get really focused on things that don't actually drive results. So let's start off with, can you tell us a little bit about your firm and where you focus?
Sure. So today I'm a fractional CMO, and I really focus on B2B and SaaS. I come to that. So I've been doing this about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was a full-time CMO at 7 B2B companies, 6 SaaS companies. So I've obviously got a lot of experience in the SaaS world, tend to focus there, although I've been working more recently with a medical device company. So, that's why I say B2B. I've got a little bit of ability there, obviously.
And is there a certain size company that's really the right fit for fractional? Like, how does a company know, what's the criteria that makes them ready to bring on a real fractional CMO versus how they got started? Like founder-led sales, when is it the right time to bring on fractional leadership?
Good point, because I talk to companies in all stages all the time. And I just wrote about this on LinkedIn. I was actually brought into a company full-time that was sub 10 million, a lot sub 10 million. And I was brought in along with a bunch of other senior execs. And it was like one of the best exec teams I'd ever worked on. The problem was then when we needed budget to actually do stuff, because I'm the tip of the iceberg, right? When it comes to marketing, I need budget to actually go do stuff, create content, get the word out. And, the head of CS needed a CS product and all kinds of stuff. Well, there's no budget left for that because they put all the money into full-time people. So that's my general rule of thumb is if you're not at 10 million, you really shouldn't have a full-time CMO. The other thing that you'll find that's very interesting, if you look at websites and you go to the About Us section and you go to startups, the last hire is always the head of marketing. They'll have sometimes customer success, they'll have finance, they'll have all those roles. Marketing is always the last one. It's always the biggest hole.
Why is that? I mean, we both know marketing matters, but why do you think there's this perception? And it's more true in SaaS. I don't understand why that is, but for SaaS, they want to like just have the product do all the work, I think, maybe. But what do you think it is?
True. And if you're talking product-led growth, it's a little different. Most of mine has been sales-led growth. So it's been, considered purchase, solutions costing $50,000, $100,000, $170,000, not something they're going to click and buy, on the website.
Yeah.
If it's $29 solution, it's a little bit different. But I think to answer your question, I think the reason that they don't think to hire marketing is very often the CEO doesn't have come from a marketing background. And so his solution is, I'm just going to hire a bunch of sellers. First off, he or she is the initial seller. They're going to go close. They're going to use their Rolodex. They're going to close a bunch of business. As that opportunity grows, they go hire sellers. And the sellers go out and then they get frustrated because the sellers can't sell the same solution they've been selling. They're like, I don't get it. I understand the solution in and out. And the sellers don't have any product marketing. They don't have any of the packaging of that or the training of that. And they're going out blind trying to sell. And they get frustrated. And they usually replace the sellers with people with a Rolodex in the industry, and they go down the sales path. And then they lean into, and this is what I see constantly, they lean into cold calling, cold emailing, LinkedIn outreach. Then they might go paid search, but they're always focusing on that 5% of the market that's in market.
You're so right.
You're so right. 5% of people that are shopping, but they're 6 months out.
Yeah, it's like only that pool of potential super hot buyers so I've loved to hear why you think that is as we kind of dig into more whys. But when I've always looked at it in terms of leverage and risk, and I think a lot of CEOs are thinking, well, it's not a huge risk to add a small, like a junior cold caller, right? These are all like small bets. So the total downside risk is pretty low. And the flip side of that is it's low leverage. So it's never going to make a massive impact. But would you think it's related to leverage or in risk, or is there another reason why they always go down that path? Because I've seen that too, like a million times.
Yeah.
It's always cold call, then email, then ads are like last.
I think it's risk. And I think it's because there's this mindset that still is out there of, hey, if I put $100, if I spend $100, I want to produce $1,000 with it. And it's much easier to see if I put a salesperson on, how many sales meetings does that person have to get? How many of those convert to a sale? It's very near term and I can see all that. And so I've come in, and I just talked to somebody 2 weeks ago who they had hired like 8 sellers and they weren't getting the number of sales they were looking for. So they invested in a firm to do cold email, and then they were investing and they kept spending money here, and then they were spending on paid search, and they just weren't seeing the results. So I kind of talked to him. I talked about, here's the problem. 5% of the market is out there looking right now. If you wait until they're ready to buy, there's data that says 81% of them already have 2 or 3 solutions. So now you're trying to displace 2 or 3 solutions that they've been looking at. They've heard on podcasts, they've heard in communities, they've looked on they've been to their website, they've got a lot of information, and you're behind at that point. But so the solution is you've got to get out there in front. You've got to invest in content. You've got to invest in some ads, some other things to start to build that awareness. Ooh, how long does that take?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
here's the reality.
Yeah.
If your sales cycle, and I work with companies who have a 7-month sales cycle. So
Yeah. Enterprise anything is just painful.
exactly. So
Yeah.
if it takes 3 to 6 months before they're ready to engage with a salesperson, and then it's another 6 or 7 months, you've got to have the faith that I'm going to invest that money. For a few months, I'm going to see just leading indicators. I'm going to see people come to the website, all that stuff, but I'm not getting the demo request. Then I'm going to start seeing demo requests. Then those are going to turn into pipeline, but that pipeline is going to still take 7 months to close. And so I've got to have that faith, and that's like a year faith to get there. I mean, again, we can see the early indicators. That's really hard for that or for that CEO who wants, I spent $100 here, I get $1,000 out of here. It's very hard. It's a risk that a lot of them are willing to take, and it takes that leap of faith but here's the thing I do tell them. If you do that and you keep investing, that flywheel is amazing. It'll keep producing because you're feeding the market now for next year's pipeline. And then next year you'll be feeding it for the following year. And so it holds. And I've even seen where CEOs have done it for a period of time, and then for various reasons, stop spending. The pipeline, it takes about a year to work.
Sticking a wrench in your bicycle as it's rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've got
don't stop.
momentum. You still have people coming in. So, and I sadly have data to prove that. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's the worst. Well, so when you were describing some of the steps as well, one thing that struck me is that they're tactical, that you were talking about specific tactics that people find. And I guess this is human nature. Like tactics are simpler to understand. Like I just do that. And I don't know, I'd love to hear your advice on this. Sometimes CEOs seem to be really excited about tactics for whatever reason. And they seem to believe that the key to success is picking the right tactic, not like, what are we saying, with whatever, that's a higher leverage thing. So do you have any advice on how do you get other CEOs to see that the tactic is not related to the answer? It's just a distraction.
Right. So I paint a picture, and I tried 2 different metaphors, a pyramid or a house, right? And the idea is, if you said, so let's take the house example. Hey, I want this amazing house. And you start with picking out the appliances and the features and all that stuff. The design could be like crap. Like you get in and you go, this is not a functional design because I didn't think about the design. I didn't do that functional work. So there's a foundational aspect to it. And that's when I go into most companies. And I wrote about this recently on LinkedIn, and the post took off. It got like 25,000 impressions and a lot of comments. And the comment was, if you have a bad sales, there's a lot of this, hey, we just need to get in front of more customers and pitch. If your pitch is wrong, doing that 1,000 times instead of 100 times is not going to close more deals if you got the wrong pitch
Yes,
and the message isn't right. So I
that's right.
almost always stop, unless the company's really nailed that piece of it. I come in and I analyze, hey, your message is good. 95% of the time, we start with the foundational work, and we start with something called a brand foundation. Know thyself, know thy customers, know thy competitors. And that starts with
Yeah,
customer interviews and all the foundational work. I worked with a company recently where we did that, where their pitch was, again, very feature driven. And so we did that, and and every customer said exactly the same thing. It was almost like a recording. The same exact story of I had this problem. I had this problem for a year. I applied the solution in 2 or 3 weeks. It was fixed every single time. And when I heard it
yeah.
enough times, I'm like, that's the story. That's the story we got.
There you
So
go.
the
Yeah,
fix is the fact that a
yeah.
year's worth of pain could be relieved in 2 weeks with this solution. But you get that by doing that foundational work, by starting with that brand
Mhm.
foundation. And then we create that narrative, the strategic buyer narrative. That's the story that's going to distance you from your competitors and position you against that. Then, and part of that is building that sales deck. Now we go get you more meetings.
Yeah, that's great. And this reminds me of another kind of false thing that everyone seems to believe is that sales is a numbers game. And I think you just hit it right on the head there that there's a difference between numbers and then multiplied by skill, right? So if you've got all the pieces in place, it's a great time to go hit the numbers. But if you have everything, it's like multiplying mistakes. If you just do the wrong thing many times, it's just a lot of pain to get 1 or 2 deals out versus everything lined up. You can scale really quickly when you've got that foundational marketing. People kind of know what you do, your position, the sales deck is proven. Then it's actually kind of funny, like when marketing and sales are set up, scaling isn't that hard. Then it's like, oh, now how do we deal with operations? But
Right. Then you worry about
beforehand, it's
customer
like something just
success.
breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And the problem is what they will do is scale that. They'll hire 8 salespeople without the proper
Yeah,
training, without the proper message, without the product marketing piece done, without the understanding of the customers. And they get frustrated because people can't sell. So they just keep
yeah,
swapping out salespeople. They think that's the
yeah,
solution. Okay, that Joe wasn't right. We need people with a Rolodex. We need people who already know people in this market. That's the problem.
yeah.
Brought in somebody who
Those are expensive people too. Those are the
they
most
are. They
expensive.
are. So let's get more experienced people again
Yeah,
without that. And the problem is the salespeople are frustrated. They need that stuff.
yeah,
When I don't have enough information to go sell, I'm just going to go pitch the best I can. And with salespeople, the pitch, they get featured. They go in and they think it's a quantity game. If I present 20 features in this 30 minutes, they're going to be more likely to buy than if I presented 5, when in
yeah,
reality, the buyer is not totaling, they're averaging. So they're going,
yeah,
wait a minute, I only need these 4 features, but you told me about the 20 features. That means I'm paying for 16 I don't need.
yeah. Or even stronger is outcomes, like you'll get from A to B. They don't even care at the end of the day, unfortunately,
Good point.
for the
Good point.
product people. They don't even care
That's right.
how
They'd
they got
rather
there.
heal the pain or get rid of the pain or whatever the solution is. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so you have all this experience. Where are you focusing now in terms of your fractional practice? Since now you're new into the fractional game or newer, where are you like, who are what are the types of firms that you want to add and you can add the most value?
Yeah, I mean, my goal and what I would love to do is add what I have seen and what I've come into many times is a company that's in that, say, 3 to 7 million ARR range. They've got a sales team. The sales team was hungry for leads. They hired a junior marketing person. They hired a concept person. They hired 2 or 3 junior marketers. You're doing a bunch of stuff. You're spending money on ads, but nothing's converting to pipeline. And the CEO is frustrated. That's a problem I'd come in and fix. That's like the ideal because I know exactly how to redirect those resources, redirect the budget, go back and do the foundational work that wasn't done to then scale the sales piece of that. So that's my ideal. What I also get a lot of is very early stage companies, pre-revenue.
Hmm.
And sometimes
Yeah.
I will work with them in a pre-revenue stage to help them get that messaging right, even to help them raise the money. That's kind of the secondary type. Again, my preferred would be that's already that 3 to 7 to
Hmm.
10 million that just needs,
That makes
they
sense.
got the elements, they're just not using them right. I can fix
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to hear about some of your experiences in that area. So one of the things that I've noticed, I'd love to hear if you see the same thing, is that once you install marketing at a company that size, install, like get some kind of lead flow that's booking calls for the sales team, interested parties. Very often the team isn't used to dealing with colder leads. They've only ever sold with referrals or that person with a Rolodex. It's way different. The motion, if you know Tony from whatever, versus if you're just filled out a form from an ad or from a social post. Do you find that the teams need to upgrade their motions as well at that stage?
What I find is I'm not necessarily competing with their Rolodex or the people they know. I'm competing with cold calling. I'm competing with cold outreach. And what I find from sellers they're going, thank you for this inbound lead, because the inbound and spent the last 6 months researching. They know exactly what we do. They're already halfway through the buying process and they're really qualified. So those inbound leads, if done properly, have a very high conversion rate to pipeline is what I have seen. And the salespeople actually love them because the cold lead doesn't show up. They get somebody on the phone. They go, okay, fine. We'll meet tomorrow at 8. And then they don't show up for the meeting. Or if they show up, they find out, yeah, but I'm not ready to buy. I'm not really in market. They get a lot of frustration. So I've generally found they love it when we build this right and we start to build that inbound motion and they have the qualified leads coming in. And that's every company I come into, the CEO says, we need more top of funnel leads. And I always say, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You need more qualified prospects who know what you do and are ready to buy or ready to talk to somebody. That's what I deliver.
I love that. That's so true. So what if we focus on that size of company, like as we wrap up, what would be your number one piece of advice be to SaaS founders who are in that range right now? They're trying to scale. What's the most important thing they need to look at that they might not know today?
Stop hiring salespeople. Stop adding more salespeople and go longer term. Don't just go with cold outreach. Don't keep investing in a new email vendor and all that, because with AI, that is so hard. That's such a hard slog. And again, you're not going after the people that aren't in market yet. So that would be my advice: is quit hiring salespeople, get your message right, and let's go out and start to get to the 80% of the people or 95% of the people that aren't in market. Have a little bit of patience, have a little bit of faith, and in a year, I can have a tremendous pipeline for you. And I've done it I've come into companies and gone from 0 pipeline to 5 million pipeline in 1 year. So it's possible to do with the right.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Chuck. It's been a pleasure.
You bet.